Hi guys, I want to make a quick video to show TAs how to work with first year students when they're working on memo and brief assignments. Maybe you're not a TA, maybe you're just a second year or third year student who wants to help a fellow one out through some of the rough patches of being a first year and doing their memo and brief assignments. So here we go. Let's start with a particular search. Now I'm going to put in this search and I'm going to make it very simple at first. And one of the things 1L students struggle with is getting back too many results, and they just have way too many results coming back at them, and they're not sure what to do with all of those results and where to begin, and if they even have a good result set in front of them. So what we usually tell students are when you put terms in the search bar and nothing's in between them, you're going to run a search based on relevancy, but not all of your terms will be in your each result. So this is a lot like a Google search where your search results are coming back on relevancy, but you may not see all of them in each result. And that's actually a first good broad search to run when you're not sure if your terms will be in each result. So we do encourage students to run this the first time around, but they will get back a lot of results. And without refining this technique, they're going to continue to get back a lot of results and may not feel confident about the results they're getting. So one way we can help them is just by putting ands in between all of your terms. And now we're telling Lexis that you must have social media and school and student in every single result. So we'll see all of those terms in our results. And taking this a step farther, instead of just saying that those words must all be in the same document. Now, by adding a /p, we're saying that all of these terms must be within the same paragraph as each other. So we're really honing in on some really good content here because we know the judge is going to be talking about these terms around each other in the same discussion with one another. Social media in the same paragraph as school, in the same paragraph as student. So let's go ahead and run that search and we'll take a look at our results. Now, typically, you guys know first year students are to start their assignments when they don't know where else to begin in secondary materials, and we're going to go there. But just for a second, I'm going to tell you guys to pop open practical guidance and to see if this is a possible option for your students. You may want to test it and see if any results pop up that seem helpful. So check out practical guidance before going to secondary materials. But just so you know, as second and third years, practical guidance is one of the best places you can go when you need to draft documents. You're making a contract, you're working with a particular client, and you've got a number of transactions that you need to get done. Practical guidance is the answer for you. But it does have a lot of substantive issues of law explained as well, and they tend to be a lot less dense than secondary materials. So it's also a good place for first years to come because they can be overwhelmed with the content that they find in secondary materials. But practical guidance can be a little bit easier to swallow and maybe a good first look at their issue. So we're going to come to practical guidance, and what I usually tell people are if you're not seeing something good in the first few results populating on the screen, then move on and just go to secondary materials. But actually our first result looks pretty good, so it would be something that I'd want to open up. And I'm looking at a state law survey that talks about students and social media and privacy rights. So each state will be reviewed in a very brief format as to what the law is regarding students and social media. And so this is where I would come in and then go straight to California and get a quick primer on what the law is. And then after that, we could go on to secondary materials like we are supposed to, like our librarians teach us to do. Now here, students are always overwhelmed by the results populating in secondary materials because there is just, again, a lot of results and they're hard to understand what looks good. So we're going to tell them from the get-go, as filter, you want to narrow by content to treatises and guides. Jurisprudence are those AmJurs and the ALRs. They'd be your second runner-up, and if you want to, you could just add them to the search by clicking the box as well. Now, if you know that you have a jurisdictional state issue, then we could come in and narrow straight to California, and we would then look at California materials that talk about our search terms. Now, if you are in Hawaii or you've got a jurisdiction other than California and you're either not seeing your jurisdiction on the list or there just isn't a lot going on, then you want to check the box for non-jurisdictional. That's going to get rid of all these other states materials and just focus in on the more general secondary sources that will talk about your topic and will still be helpful because they're talking about all the states in one particular source. So in Hawaii, you want to check non-jurisdictional, or any other state that you're not seeing listed here. We can come to non-jurisdictional. Of course, there's California. Okay, so the next filter that I like to apply here is then going to look at my sources. So you can see that I've got a whole secondary source here on social media. I've got another secondary source that talks about education law. So those might be two books that I'd want to take a look at because my issue has to do with students. So education law seems to fit. And social media, I might be able to learn what the privacy rights are regarding students in that book as well. So this is why my sources filter can be one that I love to apply, because I can really dive in and see the names of this secondary materials that are populating in my result set and select from here where I want to go and get a much better results back on my screen, because I'm telling Lexis, this is the source that we're going to look at right now. Okay, so I know you guys know what to do once you're in the secondary source, so we're going to move on now to statutes. Now, generally, if there's a statute on point to a student's research, professors will either give it to them or they'll find it in the secondary source and they can go straight there. But just in case students need to search for a statute on point, then you want to make sure that they narrow by codes, okay? There's going to be a lot of bills and legislative material on the screen that's going to be really overwhelming. So codes is the filter that you're going to want to apply. And then, of course, we need to apply that jurisdictional filter, whether it be federal or California. So now that I'm here, we can then start looking down the types of statutes that are appearing in my results set to find the best one for us. Okay, I'm going to go into this one because it's really helpful for this particular training purpose. There's a lot here on my screen to look at, so we're coming in even though it may not be the best suited statute for the issue of law regarding social media. So once you're here, students usually know that you need to, of course, read the statute, right? But what you're looking for, and you want to remind the students, is find the subsection that's most helpful for them. So if the statute's on point, do we want subsection A1 or something like that? The students really need to start figuring out what those subsections are because they're going to come into play in just a few minutes. The next thing is below the text of the statute, which of course they're going to read, is the notes. Now, these are cases that start interpreting the law of this statute. And to easily get them, I can scroll down the screen as you're seeing me do, or I can click Notes and Decisions. That will take me right to the table of contents where I can start looking at different types of case law that interpret the text of this statute. So if I want to look at this statute in terms of intoxicated people, then I may jump down and read this section here. And so that is how I use my annotations to find more cases that talk about the law in this penal code and have a reference to intoxication. Now, one thing a lot of people forget are their citing decisions here as well. Now, these are cases that cite this California Penal Code. I can assure you, if there is a statute on point to the student's research, especially a state statute, you will be able to shepherdize that statute and find all the cases that cite that statute, or in this case, the state statute. And I'm going to come into citing decisions and get that list. Now I've got about 1,500 sites here. That's a lot. So remember I said we need to pay attention to that subsection, because here in our citing decisions tab, this is actually just my Shepherd's report. It's another view looking at it through the citing decisions tab over here. We can narrow by subsection now. So when I click my subsection report, I'm going to be able to start looking at particular subsections. So you can see subsection A1, as I mentioned, has 4 total cites to it. So there are 4 cases out there that cite that particular subsection. But look at subsection B. There are 251 cites here. So this is where I can get a really nice subsection report of all the cases that cite not just the Penal Code section of California that I need, but that exact subsection as well. So it's a really nice list of cases to use for research. Okay, now let's move on. And to do that, I'm actually just going to come back and run that search again and look at our case results. Okay, now students always forget in case law that we're most concerned, of course, with finding the best cases that are very tailored to our factual situation. So this is when it comes time for us to use the search within results box. That's when you want to type in your terms that are very related to the facts of your situation. What are the facts that you can start analogizing to regarding social media? Can we say that this is an off-campus social media account? Can we say this is a social media account of the school? You know, what are terms that help discuss what type of social media account this is that might hone in on the right cases that we can align with? So are we looking at social media accounts that belong to the school or a student's personal social media account? These things might be terms I want to put into the search box, right? Of course, we want to narrow by our jurisdiction, so that's a filter I also want to apply. Once students have set the parameters here, we want to remind them to check their Ravel view. Now, students are going to love Ravel view, especially the 1L students. They have a really hard time making sure that they're finding the cases they need, right? And so this gives you a visual of their site list. The top 75 cases of their site list will be showing here in this map. And I can actually see the family tree of case law. So when I hover over it, you can see this is the JS versus Blue Mountain School District case. And this is the Bell case here. And then here's another case, Mahoney, right? So, and we're looking at all the cases that cite these cases. So that's like the family tree of case law. So these are like the granddaddy of cases for that particular legal issue. I know they're bigger cases and more relevant to my needs because they've got bigger circles, and the bigger circle, the more relevant or the more influential that case is. But I also want to pay attention to the cases that are most furthest right, because again, that's going to tell us what the current law is, right? And we can see that the current law is actually citing this newer case that looks like it's probably from the Supreme Court. So I want to focus in and make sure that I look at that Mahoney case from the Supreme Court because it's newer and a lot of newer cases are citing it as legal precedent. Okay, so that is your Ravel view. Now, before we end, I want to make sure that we go back to the beginning and you see another feature that's actually really helpful for students, including yourselves, when you're writing research papers. So we've got this brief analysis tool, and when I come in, it's going to ask us to upload a document. So I'm going to start by uploading a document, and I'm going to go right here, put in a sample brief, and upload it. So as long as the document you're uploading has some sort of citations and some sort of legal concepts for Lexis to look at, it's going to bring back case recommendations, and it will bring back similar briefs that I can take a look at, and it's going to shepherd-ize all my citations and do a quick quote check to make sure I'm citing things properly too. Now, so the three things most needed for first-year students are the shepherds. Make sure that their citations haven't changed. The shepherds reports are all still okay for them. Their cites are quoted right. And I can see here that I have 3 incorrect cites that I want to take a further look at. And then we also want to look at these recommendations of cases. Remember, I told you that students are worried they're not finding the right cases that they need. So they can actually put in their document and see what case recommendations Lexis suggests based on what they've written. So Lexis takes a look at what other people have written when they've done that sort of type of paragraph with that sort of citations and legal concepts, and they want to say, hey, did you make sure to check these 10 cases? So this is another check to make sure students are finding the cases they need. And if they say, oh yeah, I know all these 10 cases, they're not relevant because X, Y, and Z, then we can skip it. Or maybe the student's like, oh, I don't know that Maynard case. I might want to come in and take a look at that a little bit further and see if I skipped it or not, and if it's something that I want to look at. So that's what brief analysis can do for you. I think for first-year students, probably looking at similar briefs is a little over their head. They get a little confused when they're looking at real briefs that have been filed from real attorneys, so it's best to just stick to the case recommendations. Okay, now it's time to wrap up, and I want to wrap up by showing you one final thing and I might not be able to do it here. Oh boy. Okay. So I wanted to show you a feature that you can put on your Word document as you're working if you need to build a table of authorities. So just remember, guys, Lexis has a tool for that too. It's something that students do in the spring semester, which is build a table of authorities for brief assignments. And we have a tool that will do that really quickly. Reach out to me and I'll make sure to tell you all about Lexis for Microsoft Office and how you can quickly, within seconds, build a table of authority so you don't painstakingly have to do it by hand. Thanks for your time.